so again, welcome back. Understand that we are just getting back into the semester here after spring break, and we're looking at trying to look at exactly what is going to be required of you between today and the last day of the semester, which is going to fly. The spring semester always seems to go by super fast. 3 things that you need to be concerned about. 1, the exam, part 1 and part 2. I know that there's people out there going, oh my God, I just did terrible on that. Yep, probably. 2/3 of you, in all cases, not just the remote class or your class, year after year after year, part 1, we typically are lucky to get 1/3 of you to pass. The other 2/3 fail. But understand, you learn a bunch by failing. You probably learn more by failing, quite honestly. You have the parts, you have the assemblies that you can use to practice. You know where to go for additional parts and additional assemblies to work with. So I'm going to talk about that in a second. The second thing I'm going to talk about is the assignments. There's really only going to be 2 assignments left. I'm going to talk about those things, and then finally talk about the project a little bit and outline that. And I think those are up there. I think you can actually see it. I don't know if it's going to be backwards. No, it looks good. All right, so the exam, CSWA Part 1, CSWA Part 2. You have a waiting period, 15 days. So the combination of spring break is about perfect. So that with this week, you pretty much already could retake that Part 1. However, we're going to go and take Part 2 first. So in the coming weeks, in the next probably, let's say 10 days or less, I will open up a 1 full week, 7 days, where you can say, hey, get me a code. I want to take Part 2. Part 2 is going to be very similar to Part 1. The only difference is there are 3 drawing questions that are 5 points apiece. I'm going to give you a quick video or show you online or here rather how to go and study for those. It's basically just understanding the different types of drawings that are out there. They're 5 points apiece, so not a lot of weight to those. The part is very similar. It might have just maybe offset or a couple little things to do, but again, very concrete, sequential. If you can do cuts and extrudes, you can get that part drawn accurately. It's going to be, again, based on mass. And you got to apply material and what's the mass at the end. The other difference is as far as the assembly is concerned, it is going to be based on center of mass. So you got to bring that first part in. You have to float that part, match up the origins, fix that part, then assemble everything around it because it's based on center of mass. Wiggle and jiggle as much as you can. Make sure it doesn't move at the very end. It's fully defined as an assembly. Center of mass. What is X, Y, and Z? Center of mass can be found by just looking down and evaluating your part. Instead of based on the mass, as far as the part's concerned, it'll be based on center of mass, based on the assembly. So again, Part 1 will be retaken at the very end, almost as a final exam. I'll give you at least a week prior to that final. So, okay, if you look at only maybe 5 or 6 weeks of school, 7 weeks of school left, in a couple weeks you can take Part 2, and then all of a sudden you can come back and take Part 1 or retake Part 2, whatever you might need to do. These are free exams. It's hopefully a good understanding of what you might see out in the real world. Okay, assignments. The 2 that I'm going to have on Canvas within the next couple of days are exactly this. I'm going to ask you to do a practice part of your choosing, and that can come from the thousands of resources that are out there online. Type in CSWA practice part. See, you could grab, a text like this, a text like this. You could grab the text that you've been given. You could redo any of the assignments. If you look at the assignments we've done today, the first couple, how to create a fully defined sketch. Those are techniques that you need to use to pass half of the test. You can pick one of these parts inside of your textbook. There's thousands of options, like this here, okay? Honestly, I think redrawing a part rather than grabbing a new part is honestly more effective because you already have one way that you did it, and now you have to rethink and do it another way. And it might be a better way, or it might be a more difficult way. It's like, okay, now I know that I shouldn't draw it that way because I get into this bind. It's kind of like doing a maze more than once. You start to memorize the quickest, easiest path, if you will. And this is a lot about just being efficient with the software. I talked to a couple of you like, man, if I could just be more efficient. And you're like, I need this faster way to do it. I need this faster way to do it. I need this trick to go faster, whatever. Not really. The assembly you should be able to get done in 5-6 minutes, and the rest of the time you could probably devote to those parts. And if you're very concrete sequential in getting those completed, you'll have more than enough time. Trust me, on part 2, you're going to be like, wow, I got done in way less time. If you're putting in, I don't know, 4 to 6 hours a week, like you are, you're in here from 3 to 5-ish, every day, or Mondays and Wednesdays. That coupled with doing some homework on the end, if you're doing that every week, it's almost like you're an athlete that's doing enough push-ups and enough sit-ups and enough jumping jacks or enough miles of running that you're ready for the bellend at the end of the training, if you will. Okay. Then as far as the project is concerned, first and foremost, most of you have parts and assemblies that and a bunch of parts that you've been creating and are getting to a point where you're starting to put that stuff together. This should be a thought out. You should put time aside every week to say, I'm going to get this much done this week, this much done next week. By next week, I want to be this far so that you can stay on track. The parts that you're creating, the assembly you're working on, are exactly the techniques you need to have to pass the exam too. So it's kind of like cheating. I'm letting you do all this stuff that has double duty. You're getting 2 for 1, if you will. So parts and assemblies. The format. People are asking about the format. What I've given you for a format is kind of antiquated. And it's like, oh, you're going to have to come up here and do this presentation and do the things, right? I'd like to I want this more state-of-the-art, more like what's going on today. What would work for you to be able to give to somebody? If you want that to be like some type of movie or some type of PowerPoint or some type of TikTok or some type of Facebook or Twitter or what have you, maybe I'm getting too far out there and too, state of the art, but I'm using screencast right now. And maybe that's what you want to do. You want to say, okay, I'm going to take 4 or 5 minutes and I'm going to introduce myself. I'm going to talk about a little bit about myself, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about what I'm capable of inside of SOLIDWORKS. And maybe that could include, at the end of the semester, I'm also CSWA certified. I did that in 1 semester of Mr. Gutschall's class. You know him? Joking. They're going to say, no, I don't. But they're going to know CSWA. They're going to know that. Okay? So it could be, hi, I'm Scott Gutschall. I'm a senior at University of Wisconsin, Green Bay in mechanical engineering. And one of my projects I completed inside of a course called ET207, Parametric Modeling, was this assembly. So let me open up SOLIDWORKS and let me show you a little bit about this assembly. It's got 10 different parts. It's assembled in a fashion of whatever. Oh, and by the way, I'm CSWA certified. I've completed both pieces of the academic certification, and hopefully this shows you a little bit of what I'm capable of. Now, if that assembly is also something that you're passionate about, they're going to hear your excitement inside that screencast or TikTok or whatever, and in 3 to 5 minutes, you might be able to dump that into a YouTube video instead of screencast or whatever, and you can have an automatic link that you can send to somebody. Like I'm going to send to this class here in a second, or you'll be able to grab off of Canvas, and you might end up landing a job out of it. Might even be a 6 figures job. Maybe they'll give you an extra 20 grand a year just because they thought you were pretty darn cool. Okay, remember the 1.5% rule. That does apply to salaries. I garnish. I can set up the form to garnish weight. I'm just joking. But with all due respect, I mean, I hope you're seeing the value beyond school with what we're doing here. So again, midterm exam, within the next couple of weeks, you'll be able to take part 2. I know that many of you are like, no, I just want to take part 1. I want to get that passed first. Taking part 2 will prepare you better for taking part 1. Now you're already in the 15-day waiting period. If you have to take part 2 over again, you can do that. Okay, you're already, it's going to be the best way to do it. Assignments, you're going to see 2 of them. One's going to be with parts, one's going to be with assemblies. I want you to fine-tune your abilities in there. Many places you can look for those things, but I'll basically be asking you to say, show me some things that you've done to prepare yourself better to create parts. And then the other assignment will be, show me a couple things that you've done additionally for assemblies. And then the project itself. So if you have questions, we're going to answer those now for this class right here, and I hope the remote group probably appreciates kind of seeing what we kind of do in here. It's very similar, and the content's identical. Okay. All right, so questions. And I appreciate